Hey there, I'm Susan Ortolano, psychic, spiritual life coach, medical intuitive from SusanOrtolano.com, and welcome to the Awakening Empath 5-Day Challenge. Now, this challenge is, I don't know, it's going to take it pretty deep. These videos are not going to be perfect. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm going to do the best I can to share a lot of information with you, give you things that you could not only use during this challenge, but you can use moving ahead. Now, if you're here, it's because you've either worked with me before and you really enjoy it, you've been part of my Psychic Goddess Within group, or you found this on Instagram or Facebook and you thought, oh my gosh, I think that's me. Are you a highly sensitive person? Do you identify as an empath? Do you have some psychic gifts that you're wanting to explore? That's what this is all about. And this is really about helping you as an empath, as a highly sensitive person, as a psychically gifted person, understand some tools and some things that you can do to have that energy really work for you. Because with being an empath and being highly sensitive, often, and I know this from my own personal life, which I'll share a little bit about, but we are very, very sensitive. We're sensitive to noise and light and people energy, and we can feel the feels of other people. We can often feel the energy of the entire planet. We can feel energy all around us. And we are the people who tend to say yes and tend to help people and tend to give. We don't like violence very much. It's really hard for us to watch suffering. Suffering is really, really difficult. And what happens when we're not taking care of our beautiful, precious, empathic energy? We get drained, we lose our vitality, we can get sick, we can just feel like it's so hard to get out of bed, or we just don't want to be around people. There's so many things that you can use to define an empath. It's about 25% of the population, 25 to 30, because there are more empathic kids coming into the world today. But if you are identifying as an empath, and you do have some psychic gifts, you are going to really understand a little bit more about that and about yourself as we move through this 5-day challenge. So get ready to really dive into this. Some of these challenges are going to be, again, things that you can take with you and do for years to come, so to speak. And there are things I'm going to ask you to post in the group, photos of things I'm going to ask you to post in the group, and I'm going to ask you to be your word with some of the things I ask you to post. Now, each person who does the challenge each day in excellence will be put into a basket. The name will be put into, I call it the Goddess Basket. And each day during a Facebook Live, most of them are 1 p.m. U.S. Pacific time, unless it says otherwise, I'm going to draw a name, and that person will win a little prize and have that prize sent directly to them. So this is going to be an exciting week, and hopefully for those of you who have worked with me before, this will take you a little bit deeper. But if you haven't, then this might be the entree to something that will change your life, will really start a big process of transformation. So let me tell you a little bit about me for those of you who are new to me. Again, I'm Susan Ortolano. I am a psychic empath. I've been an empath since I was a kid, and I thought I was going a little bit crazy because I was so sensitive. I cried a lot. I felt the feelings of other people. I couldn't stand to witness suffering, and I was everybody's little helper growing up. And it was really a beautiful gift, but it was a challenge because most people couldn't fit it into their little box of what normal was. So I would get comments from family, comments from kids at school, comments from teachers. Even though I was teacher's pet and teachers really loved me, they really would put on my report cards that I cried too much, that I was overly sensitive, overly emotional. So that's sort of the little tiny narrow box people put me in. And I started opening up to some of the knowing, the seeing, the feeling. I'm dominant clairvoyant, dominant clairsentient, but we all have kind of a mixture of gifts when we're gifted. And so some of that started to come out then too, and I didn't know what was going on. But at the age of 10, a woman, a friend of my mother's, gave me a book on astrology. And I could not get enough of it. She told me, she asked me when my birthday was. I said, it's July 3rd. And she says, oh my gosh, you're a Cancerian. And she proceeded to tell me all about myself And everything started to begin to make sense for me, because even the sun sign, even though astrology is a lot more complex than a sun sign, that sun sign described me well enough that I thought, wow, I fit into something. And it really started me on the journey, on the quest to discover the psychic gifts that I have, and to really learn to hone in the empath energy. And that is what we're here for, is to really help you hone the empath energy, learn how to navigate it by using some of the things that I bring forward this week. Clearly, I can't give you everything here, but I'm going to give you a lot. So those of you who, again, are new to me, it's a little bit about who I am. You can learn more about me and the work that I do at susanortolano.com. That is my website. Or if you stay in the Psychic Goddess Within, you'll be able to, on a regular basis, what I do in that group is I do a lot of posting. I do Facebook Lives. I pull cards, and we just have a lot of fun in that group. And I also do some paid services as well, of course, and you'll hear about that a few videos from now. If you are interested, there's no pressure, there's no have to in terms of having to buy my services. This is a challenge. This is for you. If you choose to do that after you've had an experience of it, that is up to you. And I'm not going to even pretend I'm not going to make you an offer to try on something or to step into a paid service. So I'm just going to be upfront about that. And you have the ability to say no, which I know for empaths is really, really hard to do. So with all of that said, and more said during the daily Facebook Lives, where you're going to get some mini reads as well as I go through and talk about the day's challenge. And I like to do some mini reads and answer some intuitive questions, so to speak. We're going to talk about these 7 empath archetypes. Now, I've taken the empath energy and I've divided them into 7 different archetypes. Now, we have pieces of all the different archetypes within us. So as I'm describing them, you might say, oh, that's me. Oh, well, that's me too. Well, oh, that's me as well. You're going to have one dominant archetype, and you're going to get an opportunity to take an assessment to find out which your dominant archetype is. But I'm going to go over all of them for you, because whatever dominant archetype you are, that's the one that's going to come to your inbox. That's the one that you're going to get. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the other archetypes, because you will recognize yourself in some of them. Now, the first one is for those of you who are both analytical and empathic. Yes, analytical people can be empaths as well. It's called the analytical empath, and I have my notes here, so I'm going to read from them, because it's just really hard to have all of this stuff completely memorized, so bear with me as I read for you some of the core characteristics and some of the things about the analytical empath archetype, in case that is you, or that you can identify with it. This is actually one that I don't personally have a lot of within me, because I'll share what my dominant archetype is, and some of the things that I have from other archetypes. This particular one, I know that there are analytical empaths out there, because I've worked with some, I know some, and that's why I decided to create an archetype that was very analytical. And the analytical empath is a little more grounded than some of the other archetypes. So if you're somebody who's sort of divided between your logical mind, the knowledge that you've accumulated, and you're feeling the feels as well, you might be an analytical empath. Some of the common characteristics, or the core characteristics, very analytical, very logical, very intelligent. And again, it's like you may get intuitive information via claircognizance, which is direct knowing, where it just, information just pops in, and it's coming from somewhere else besides your mind. And that's a whole other thing. It's like, which is coming from my mind and which is really my intuition. That is something I teach in a program I have called the Psychic Sisterhood. For now, direct knowing is part of the psychic gift, claircognizant for the analytical empath, but it's really a challenge to go from head to heart. And that's what an analytical empath needs to do in order to really thrive in the world, is learn how to go from their head to their heart. And getting into the heart space and getting into the head space for an analytical empath is equally easy, so to speak. And so it is very challenging to distinguish what's coming from where. And that is the core, I would say, challenge for the analytical empath. Generally, analytical empaths don't trust very easily because they don't know where things are coming from. And sometimes an analytical empath will. It's sort of like, hey, that's knowledge. I learned that in college, or I learned that in school, so I know that was programmed into my mind. But if something comes forward, you don't know where it came from, you didn't get it programmed, you didn't get it taught to you, that might be your intuition, and that might be a way to distinguish your knowledge versus your intuition. So what I have on each archetype and what you'll get, this is what the analytical empath looks like, is it'll explain some of the blocks, some of the core characteristics, some of the psychic superpowers, some of the boundaries that you'll need to take, some of the astrological signs that are most likely to be that particular archetype, as well as the chakras, the chakra energy systems to clear, to keep things energetically balanced. So you're going to get that full report. And so I'm just going over pieces of each one, and this is the analytical empath. Next, we have the emotional empath. Looks like this. The emotional empath, I have to say, is it's one of the most challenging empaths to be, because we're already emotional. We already, and I say we because this is my dominant archetype, we feel so much. We are so highly sensitive that adding emotional empath on top of already being emotional as an empath just gives it, I don't know, times 100, so to speak. We tend to take on the feelings of other people more than other archetypes. We can be psychically tuned in to the feelings, to the emotions of other people, and we feel people's energy very, very strongly. This is the most sensitive archetypes of all the empath archetypes, and all the empaths are highly sensitive. Core characteristics, feeling everything on an emotional level. Everything's from the heart. Very sensitive to clothing, to the environment, to food, to criticism, to harshness, like somebody speaking to you in a very harsh way, even if they don't mean to, it lands very loudly, and it lands in a way that doesn't feel very good. We're sensitive to loud sounds, to bright lights, to the pain and suffering of others, and we have a very low threshold for physical sensation, physical pain. So we feel things emotionally, physically. Like I have a hard time watching those SPCA, those suffering animal commercials, like come adopt this animal before we put them down, or they've been beaten, or they've been abused. I can't even watch that. We have a hard time watching the news, and other archetypes have a hard time watching the news as well, because you're not going to turn on the news and hear, oh, what a great day it is today. Here are all the wonderful things that have happened in the world. No, you hear about all the horrible things that are happening, and it's very hard for an emotional empath to really handle the suffering of other people. So I always say to emotional empaths, where that's the dominant archetype, just don't watch very often. Try not to watch a lot of violence. It's very intolerable, more so for an emotional empath, and also for most of the other archetypes as well. But we are probably the least, not the least grounded, but we have a really hard time managing our emotions. And it's really important to have energetic, I like to call them parameters or boundaries, or have psychic safety, and do a lot of cleansing, which we're going to be talking about later on during the challenge, because we just take things in our third chakra, which is right below the breastbone, right up in the upper rib cage, and also in our heart chakra. We're that sensitive. One of the gifts that we have as emotional empaths is we're dominant, clairvoyant, clairsentient. Obviously, clairsentience is like it being an empath. It's feeling. It's psychic feeling. So we tend to feel very, very strongly, again, more so than other archetypes. We are also very clairvoyant. We can see things. And that's one of my dominant psychic gifts. So it's really cool to have these psychic gifts, I have to say. But also we have to look at how we can keep ourselves safe, how we can keep ourselves and our energy really well managed. Otherwise, the emotions can get really, really dark and really, really deep. And we can cry a lot. We can really get hard on ourselves, thinking it's really about us when it's about somebody else's suffering. We can also get down on ourselves too as an emotional empath more than other archetypes. So that's the emotional empath archetype. Next, we have the energetic empath, and this is the other archetype that is a little more grounded, just like the analytical, than the rest of the archetypes. This is also referred to often as a geomantic empath, and that is somebody who can really tap into the energy of the planet, of animals, of plants, of things going on geologically speaking, some of the weather patterns. This archetype can really get tuned into that. And on one hand, it's really cool to be able to say, oh, I think there's going to be a hurricane, or, oh, I feel like it's going to snow. But on the other hand, it is hard to feel everything that's happening on the planet, or, if there's going to be an attack or something like that, or if there's going to be a wildfire if you're living in California like I do. But we feel things. We also, the energetic empaths are also really good with objects. And holding on to objects to read for somebody is called psychometry. Energetic empaths are really, really good at that. And I will share a little bit more about what else the energetic empath is good at. But being an energetic empath, you're very grounded. You like nature. Being in nature is a really good thing, and you can actually feel the energy of the trees and the flowers, and, as I said, the plants, which is a beautiful thing to have as a gift. Some of you as energetic empaths will see the big picture of life and not be like the analyticals are really detail oriented. The energetics can be detailed too, but mostly see the big picture of things. Love structure. Energetics and analyticals like a lot of structure. And again, it's like very sensitive to environmental energy. So nature is a beautiful thing to feel, but if you're walking into a room and the room has some bad juju, meaning there's some, people energy that isn't so great, an energetic empath will feel the energy of the room really, really fast. Or if you're going to a geographical location, let's say you're taking a vacation and you're an energetic empath, you're going to feel the vibe of wherever it is you're going, the climate, the people, just the vibe of the entire location that you're going to. I have a little bit of that too. As I said, we have different pieces of other archetypes, but this is really strong for an energetic empath. And the energetic empaths get really frazzled with the energy that's going around. If it's really influential, so it can really kind of take you down if you're walking into a place and there's some bad juju, or can really kind of lift you up if you're feeling like you're in a positive space. Really important for you to be surrounded by positive people as much as possible. And later on in the challenge, we're going to talk about how each empath archetype, or all the archetypes, can really kind of, I don't want to say protect themselves, because I don't want to say we're in danger, but can help ourselves keep our energy really cleansed. How's that? Energetic empaths, yes, really can get fatigued as well, and that's something to really be conscious of, needing a lot of sleep. That juju out there can really kind of bring that vitality down. That's true for most of the archetypes, but especially this one. The core psychic superpowers, clairsentience, claircognizance, clairaudience, and mediumship, and because energetic empaths tend to be multi-clair gifted, which is really, really cool. And they don't need to dig into every grave detail about everything. Often, if somebody's a dominant energetic empath and they're tapping into psychic superpowers, they'll get what they need to get pretty quickly. Again, they're going to sense what might be good for a business, for a home energy, for the planet. And, hopefully at home, as an energetic empath or any empath archetype, you're able to create a home environment that really, really honors your beautiful energy. So that's the energetic empath. Then we have the intuitive empath. And again, it's like all empath archetypes are intuitive, but there's an actual archetype that is called the intuitive empath. These are empaths that are highly prophetic, more prophetic than some of the other archetypes. And again, it's like if you're an empath and you identify as a psychic, yeah, you've got a piece of the intuitive empath as well. I know I do. So intuitive empaths tend to focus on what they see ahead. They can see the future trajectories for people, for the planet, for events. And certainly people have free will. Intuitive empaths are often quite accurate about what lies ahead and can really predict even when something will happen, and that's really hard to do. Some of the core characteristics of the intuitive empath: they're sharp, witty, clever, very tuned in. They spend time, again, in their imagination and often are imagining the future or actually seeing the future. They're fun, they're energetic, they're avid learners, and can hear and know things as well. So an intuitive empath has to be really conscious of staying grounded, because an intuitive empath can like fly out there. So it's really important to stay grounded, and it's really important to stay in the present, to remember what's happening right here, right now, because there's a tendency to be very, very focused on the future. Common blocks to manifestation is part of this too. These empaths are information overloaded more than other empaths. It's very hard to manage mind clutter, to discern some of the information coming in, and a little bit like the analyticals. This archetype has a hard time identifying whose future they're seeing. It's like, is this my future information? Is this somebody else's future information? It takes a lot to learn how to distinguish whose information about the future is actually coming in. And again, staying grounded is something that an intuitive empath has to really learn how to do. And intuitive empaths tend to worry quite a bit. They don't always pay attention to what's going on right now. You know, if you've ever, okay, this sounds weird, but if you've ever taken any kind of medication for anything, whether it's like allergies or colds or thyroid or anything, often an intuitive empath will take a medicine and then forget they took it because they weren't focused in the right here, right now. They were so focused on the future and what they needed to do next that they forgot if they took the allergy pill or not. And so that has to be something that an intuitive empath needs to focus on more. And getting into action, because an intuitive empath often spends more time looking into the future and learning, because an intuitive empath loves to study and learn. They need to focus on getting into action a little bit more, because they have a tendency to be here and to be intuiting all the time. So I'm going to, for those of you who are intuitive empaths, and that's the one that you get, you'll be able to read a little bit more about yourselves as you take the assessment, and if this is what you come out with. The next archetype is the spiritual empath. And yes, most people who are empaths are very highly spiritual to begin with, but this archetype is a very unique one because it has a very special blend of skills. And I happen to be married to somebody who is an empath, who's a spiritual empath as his dominant empath archetype. So this archetype, they're natural mediums. If you're a spiritual empath, first of all, you're incredibly spiritual. You've got a really easy way of connecting with the universe, connecting with spirit, God, the all that is, the oneness, the one mind, whatever you choose to call the higher power or your higher self. Spiritual empaths can channel entities, can hear wisdom from the higher spiritual planes, can download information that's coming from the higher self or coming from the spirit within or the inner being, whatever you want to call it. They're of high vibration and can connect, I can really say that word, connect deeply with the other side and with spirit guides. Really cool archetype, right? Now, again, if you're another archetype as your dominant archetype, it doesn't mean you cannot do these things. It doesn't mean you're not spiritual. This particular archetype takes this, again, times 100, times 1,000. Core characteristics: spiritual empaths are like the TV antennas of the universe. They pick up sounds and voices and information and are so connected spiritually that they have kind of this innate calmness, because there's this automatic sense of trust. There's this automatic sense of trust because they can get information pretty easily from the universe, from spirit, from their inner compass, their inner guide, their spirit guide. So there's a sense of calmness because they have easier access to doing that. They can be very zen, very peaceful, very meditative, and very tranquil. And they tend to be trusting and trustworthy. They are seen as people of great wisdom. So if you take the assessment and you're a spiritual empath, those are some of the cool things that that are dominant within you. Some of the core blocks to manifestation, these empaths are less action-oriented. When you're spiritual, you're kind of up here. When you're intuitive empath, you're kind of up here. When you're an emotional empath, you're somewhere in here. So this particular empath really needs to work on taking action in the real world, coming back to the fact that they're in a human experience, because sometimes it's easy to forget when you're that connected spiritually. And just really, you know, it's a combination of taking inspired action and knowing that the universe will do what the universe does. But sometimes this archetype tends to be a little too much. The universe will take care of everything. I can go sit on my couch. Or missing some of the physical signs that come forward to draw us into taking action. So they need to really work on completing action tasks and balancing their spiritual energy, their spiritual practice, and conversations with entities and angels and guides with the higher realms, with some of the earthly responsibilities. Now, those core psychic superpowers are very cool with a spiritual empath: psychic channeling, mediumship, clairaudience, claircognizance, super connected in with guides and angels and higher beings, as I said. They can hear and channel information through their own voice, or it comes forward. Clairaudience and mediumship often comes forward as your own voice, but you know that you're channeling somebody other than yourself. So that's often how it's like, you're not going to hear this big booming voice that you may think, you know, from a TV show or something like that. It's really comes forward in your voice, but you know it's not you. You know it's not coming just from your thought process, but it comes through as your own voice. So that's a little bit about the spiritual empath. It's a beautiful empath archetype to be. So those of you who test as spiritual empaths, that's awesome. If you test as another type of empath, again, you may have some of the core characteristics and psychic superpowers of some of the others. So number 6, and there are 7, is the visual empath. Now, visual empaths are seers and definitely have a lot of clairvoyance, but also can see things that go bump in the night, so to speak, where it's like they may be more prone to seeing spirits and seeing apparitions, and often have a photographic memory. Now, if you have a photographic memory and you're a dominant emotional archetype like me, doesn't mean that, again, you don't have aspects of other archetypes. This archetype just happens to have a very, very, I would say, pronounced photographic memory, and are very visual in the way that they learn. Core characteristics, of course: visual learners, very artistic, whether it's writing or visual art or baking or whatever. Creativity is we'll say comes easily for them, but they're super creative and artistic. They see things, of course, as I said, love photographs and movies and TV and books, anything that gives them a visual thing to look at, or story to read or see. Because when you're reading a book and you're a visual empath, and even if you're a dominant other archetype, you're going to create the world in your visual here that you think everything looks like from a book. But for a visual empath, it's even more pronounced. Now, some of the common blocks that a visual empath has to work on, while great at creating and seeing positive visions and aberrations and all that kind of stuff, a visual empath can also start to see a negative future fantasy for themselves, because they're so visual and they have such a vivid imagination. They can imagine the best, and they can also imagine the worst. And so it's really hard to let go of some of those painful visual memories as well. Like if you saw something, if you're a visual empath, it's like imprinted in your mind, and you're going to have to do a lot of work to let some of that stuff go. Visual empaths can get spooked by what they see or misinterpret, which causes a lot of stress. They can withdraw or avoid certain environments, aspects of life, and people. It's like if what they're seeing is unpleasant, it's very, very hard on a visual empath. And visual empaths are really good at clairvoyance. I was going to say they're predominantly clairvoyant. They excel at psychic channeling and clairsentience, just like the emotional empath. They can see pictures of past, present, and future. They also can see how people are feeling. And that's an odd way of saying it. It's like, I'm not necessarily feeling it, but I'm seeing how they feel. They're able to see aspects of events on the planet and have a very, as I said before, vivid imagination. They're great at visioning for their own future, but again, and manifesting through focusing on that vision, but also have to be careful, again, of the negative future fantasies that they may visualize in their mind, like visualizing the worst thing that can happen. They do excel at teaching other people. They, along with most other empaths, wish Harry Potter's Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry was actually real. I think most of the empaths, we wish that was a real place. So energetic boundaries, we're going to be talking about that later in the week, so I'm not going to go over it for every archetype, but if you are, whatever archetype you get, it'll tell you some of the energetic boundaries, and again, I don't like that word boundary, but I put it anyway. You'll be able to see what's highest and best for your archetype, and you're going to get a whole load of understanding and tools and things that you can work with to help your energy as we go along with this challenge. Number 7, and the final archetype, and then I will give you the challenge of the day. This is the physical empath. And if you are a physical empath, and I have parts of me that are physically empathic, it is the psychometric. Gosh, I really wish I could speak better today as I'm recording this. The psychometric empath, meaning these empaths are very tactile. They feel physical sensations and pick up information from objects, which is called psychometry. And that's a really great psychic gift where you hold on to somebody's ring or a piece of clothing and you can actually read them that particular way. But the tactile energy is really, really a standout for a physical empath, as well as having sensations in the body. When you're close to something that doesn't feel good, the body will react, and it's a mixed bag, because on one hand, the body will alert you to things. On the other hand, it's not always pleasant. And so there are ways to work with that, of course. It's not like a horrible sentence. But kinesthetics are a great way that the physical empaths pick up information, the action, the movement, the physical sensitivities, the physical energy. So, of course, these empaths are physically sensitive, more prone to illness than other empaths, unfortunately, feel physical sensations, as I said, of other people, have a physical reaction when picking up energy or when negative things are happening. There's a visceral physical response. They've got a low tolerance for physical pain, as I mentioned before, for themselves and for other people. So it's like if their best friend is in pain, they may feel it. And that's really tough. That's really tough. And so there are ways to manage that as well. They have positive physical experiences when happy, when joyful, when really positive events and positive events are happening and positive people are around. And love gentle physical touch. It's very hard. It's like rolfing in the world of massage is not a good idea for a physical empath, and generally for empaths at all. Rolfing is really, really painful. I say painful, really, really strong massage to kind of push out some of the energy, but it's very hard on an empath, especially a physical empath. Some of the core blocks for these empaths, harsh touch, like I just mentioned, can often be painful. And some people, if somebody shakes your hand or gives you a hug and they pull too hard, it can be very, very exceptionally painful for a physical empath, painful for empaths in general. Like somebody has that really rough handshake, or, especially, and I have to say for ladies, if a man hugs you and he's not your spouse or your partner and he doesn't know his own strength, it can really, it's just being friendly, but it can really be painful. It's kind of like, so it's very important for physical empaths to get the gentle touch, to get really nice light massages, because that tough massage is really not a good idea. And chiropractic, even that crack, is not a good idea at all, because it can be really rough for a physical empath. Physical empaths need a lot of physical space around them to sleep and recenter themselves. If they don't take extra self-care, their bodies are prone to illness and have a hard time with food sensitivities, with environmental sensitivities as well. Wearing objects of others, oh my gosh, you can pick up as a physical empath that energy that transfers on. And I'm not a physical, I mean, like I have a lot of pieces of the physical empath, and I had a bracelet that I inherited from somebody. I will not say who, but I started feeling their feelings. I started feeling not their ailments, like a physical empath would put on somebody's jewelry and perhaps feel their physical stuff. I felt the emotions of the person whose bracelet that I was wearing, and I didn't realize I had to cleanse it, energetically cleanse it in order for me to be able to wear it. So that can happen. Self-care is really critical for a physical empath, the body care. And, you know, it's like being very physically sensitive, you might think grounding is really, really a positive experience, but grounding when you're feeling a lot in your body can be a difficult thing to go do, but very, very necessary to ground into nature, because nature is very sensitive for a physical empath, but can also be very helpful. So going into nature, you want to be careful. You don't want to do big hikes or things that are super strenuous for the body, because you want things to be a little more gentle. Even exercise, you don't want to be the one doing that high impact aerobic workout. You want to be the one doing like the Tai Chi and the Qigong and that kind of stuff. So what you're going to do today, those are the 7 empath archetypes, or little bits about each of them. And again, it's like you're going to find that you pretty much fit the dominant archetype that you have, but you're also going to have bits and pieces of some of the other archetypes. So what your challenge is today is to take the assessment. I have provided a link for you in the email, and you are to understand and read through the entire report of your dominant empath archetype, and I want you to post in the Psychic Goddess Within group which archetype is your most dominant, and that will be your post. The second part of the challenge each day is what I call the Empath Awareness Guidebook. Honestly, you just get a notebook, and I call it the Empath Awareness Guidebook, because what you're going to do is you're going to be doing some writing. And I'm going to give you a prompt each day of the challenge, and you're going to be writing that prompt. And when you write that prompt, you're going to take a little photo, and you're going to also post it in the group. Now, if you don't want anybody to read what you've written, so you could take it from far away, and you could just label it day 1 prompt, or day 1, or day 2, or day 3, however you want to do that. Your prompt for today to write about is where in your life have you experienced high levels of sensitivity? What has happened as a result? So if you're somebody who has experienced a high level of emotional sensitivity, you want to write a little bit more than I've experienced a high level of emotional sensitivity. I want you to write a little bit about that experience, what's happened as a result of being that way. So you're going to take the assessment. You've listened to a little bit about each archetype, and you're going to get a whole report on your dominant archetype, and then you want to post that in the group. I am an intuitive empath, or I am a dominant emotional empath. Woohoo. And then you're going to write in your Empath Awareness Guidebook about the sensitivity. Have you experienced high levels of sensitivity in your life, and what that has been like for you, or what has happened as a result? Put it in your Empath Awareness Guidebook, take a little picture, post that in the group as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be coming in live, and this is the first day live is not going to have prizes because we haven't done anything yet. But as I see everybody posting, and those who post in excellence, meaning you post in excellence, both things that I've asked you to post, you'll be put into the Goddess prize basket, and the prizes will start day 2 tomorrow. And if you are chosen for a prize, then I will private message you and get your information so that I can get you your prize. And we have a grand prize, of course, which is a full scholarship to the Psychic Sisterhood 10-month group program. And some of the people here are in the Psychic Sisterhood program and are already a part of this amazing program, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a couple of days. But that is the grand prize, and it's worth about $2,000. So it is a pretty big prize because folks who are signing up for it or registering for it are paying $199 a month or $19.99. So it's worth about $2,000. And to get a scholarship to this 10-month program, the signature program that I offer, is pretty amazing. And I will talk more about that. So that is your challenge for today, and a little bit about the empath archetypes. I know this runs long, and there are going to be a couple of these videos that run long because I may take you through a process. I may be explaining something like this to you. And so because I want you to have the full value experience. So with that, go ahead, take the assessment, post who you are, go ahead and write about your prompt, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye now.